While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season, literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Did you know that when you retire, your calling doesn't retire? Your calling is a lifetime calling. And if you're still around, God isn't done with you yet. I know you're fully aware of what you retired from, but what did you retire to? You've tuned into iRetire4Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, an organization dedicated to you, the retiree who loves Jesus and wants purpose for all of your days, especially the ones ahead of you. Bruce Bruinsma joins us today as the founder of the Retirement Reformation. He's here to encourage and walk with you through retirement. And I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg. Please check us out online, retirementreformation.org, and on Facebook, Retirement Reformation. It's no joke when my retired friends say to me, growing old ain't for sissies. Growing older has all kinds of challenges that come with it, but also a ton of possibilities. In the last 60 years, retirement has gone from a few years to almost an average of 30 years. Sometime during these 30 years of retirement, a common theme arises. It's called isolation. Isolation leads to many bad things such as loneliness, addiction, divorce, bankruptcy, and suicide. We continue today our 5-part series dealing with the impacts of isolation in our great years. Today, we're going to talk about isolation, which leads to bankruptcy. Rest assured, we'll bring you the truth, and in that truth, the freedom to walk through your financial issues without experiencing bankruptcy and eliminating the isolation that started you down that rough financial path in the first place. Bruce, seniors in America used to be known for being really for being in great financial shape, or should I say greater shape than anyone else. They had houses that were paid for and savings in the bank. What happened?
Well, I think life happened and increased both individual desires, family desires, and individual desires to have more and to not be trained or connected with the implications of expenditures. And so then, and so you've got a lack of knowledge and a lack of taking appropriate action, of wise financial planning. And then you've got some other kinds of things that have popped up that we've never had before. So the rising cost of medical expenses is just absolutely huge. I think it's the second leading cause for bankruptcy is just overwhelmed with medical expenses. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. And that's not our intent here for this time to go into what those reasons are, but simply to be aware of them is important. So it's expenditures, credit cards, lack of dealing wisely with our expenses and with our income, and then medical expenses are two. We're going to talk about isolation leading to divorce, but that's also plays a role in the bankruptcy issues. And so it's, Jim, it is so simple. If you spend less than what you have coming in,
right,
and you save the difference, it's going to work out okay. For most people, that's a totally foreign concept, and there's all kinds of cultural and social issues that have led to that, and that until we understand them and take steps with them as Christ followers to be good stewards, the issue of bankruptcy is going to just continue to grow.
And it's crazy. And you didn't mention in there the Joneses. A lot of times we wanted to blame our debt on the Joneses, keep it up with, the Joneses. Is there some of that going on too in people in their retirement years? Is there keeping up with the Joneses still going on?
Well, I think there's the desires that I want changes to, or I need changes to I want, or I want changes to I need. And the fact that we have not come to agreement as couples, for example, on how in fact we're going to manage our resources. Typically what happens is that one spouse or the other manages the money and the other one either spends it or in other cases will not spend anything. And so the whole idea of how we deal with money as couples, how we deal with money in relation to our culture and our neighbors and what we have, and then all the things that are available to us. As a matter of fact, when I travel around the world, one of the reasons why people want to come to the United States is because they see all the stuff we have and they'd like to have that stuff. And so that plays its role too. We have one other thing that's happening with our families, and it's impacting. We'll talk about that in the divorce segment, but that we want the best for our kids. And so we have no boundaries whatsoever. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine, actually a client of mine, a number of years ago, came to me and wanted to borrow $50,000 against his retirement plan. And I said, why do you want to borrow that money? He said, well, because my only daughter is going to get married. I said, wow, that's going to be a nice wedding. He says, oh, no, that's not, no. He says, I also borrowed $100,000 against my house. I says, so now you're going to put $150,000 against the wedding. And then there was a savings account of another $20,000. So there was a total of $170,000. I did my very, very best to talk him out of that and say, no, you need to put some boundaries on this. It's my only daughter and it doesn't matter. Okay. Time passes, wedding takes place. He comes back to see me. And I said, so how did the wedding go? He said, oh, it was a fantastic wedding. It was just spectacular. And he told me how they spent their $170,000 and they spent it all. And I said, so how's the marriage going? He says, well, that's the kind of sad part. This is 6 months after the wedding.
Oh my.
He says, that's the sad part. He says, they're going to get divorced. So he's still got the borrowed against his retirement, the $100,000 against his house, the reduced savings. And 6 months later, he came back and said, Bruce, he said, I can't dig myself out of this. I'm going to have to declare bankruptcy.
Oh, man. That's rough. This whole series is how isolation leads us down these paths. How does isolation lead us to bankruptcy? How do you see that connection?
Well, the fact that in this case, and let me just go back to the example that I just gave you. How did isolation play a role with that? Well, he was married, but their marriage was, they never communicated. I mean, he was isolated in his marriage and he was totally committed to his daughter. And so without any other input from a pastor or another financial planner or his spouse or anybody else that could influence him, he was making the decisions all based upon his own emotion and what he wanted to do. So he was isolated in a context where he didn't need to be, but he was. And so he made those bad decisions within that. And typically, as it says in Proverbs, where you have two or three that come together, you're going to have a stronger bond and you're going to have, better input. You need advisors. And when you are isolated, you don't have any advisors. Therefore, you're making your decisions typically just based upon your emotion and your perception of what it is that you need. And you go ahead and buy it. And obviously our credit cards give us the flexibility to do it, but we don't think about how, in fact, we're going to then pay it back. And let's talk about retirement, because in the case of so many of us, retirement is something that we are owed. Retirement is something that we are owed, whether we are prepared or not. And if we are owed and we're going to retire, we're going to stop work, income's going to stop. And that creates the strain in our relationships. We continue to isolate in that, and we just simply don't have the funds to do what we think we should be able to do or what we see the Jones doing, and we go ahead and spend the money anyway. We're going to take a $10,000 cruise, and you've got, $50 in the bank and $8,000 left on your credit card. So what do you do? I remember we had a foster daughter that lived with us for a while, and after she left, and we stayed in touch, and she was going to go do something, and I asked her, I said, so where are you going to get the money? She said, well, I maxed out my credit card. So I said, what are you going to do? Answer, get another credit card. And so this whole idea of insufficient retirement savings, planning, recognition, wisdom, and just simply good stewardship all lead to the bankruptcy. And when we feel we're making the decision just for ourselves because we're isolated, we see that as the only way out. It's like divorce. I don't like my wife. What's the only way out? Get a divorce. I've overspent my capacity. I don't know what's the way to get out. How do I do that? I go bankrupt. And the implications of that in relationships as well as credit and everything else are just accelerating at a scary, scary rate.
When we come back in segment 3, I really want to talk about, is there hope after bankruptcy? Because a lot of people listening have got some financial trouble and they want to know, is there hope? And how do they walk their way out of some financial trouble for whatever reason that got them in there? You're listening to iRetire4Him. In our second segment, you got a great interview coming up just to hear somebody's story of how they're living out their faith in retirement. And we'll come back in segment 3 and finish this conversation on how isolation leads to bankruptcy. But there's truth, because in God, there is always a win-win in this situation. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but stay tuned.
Recreating Retirement is an interactive small group study helping you to move from nothing to what's next. You can join us on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. East Coast time on Facebook Live. Our goal for this study is to provide a group setting for interaction and new ideas while leading you through a first step in your journey from retirement to reformation. Here's the big idea. During the next 5 years, 5,000 small groups will experience this journey of discovery in churches and faith-based organizations across the country. Is your church a place where recreating retirement needs to be planted? Join us online to experience the study or prepare to lead a small group at your church or ministry. Email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org or go to our website at retirementreformation.org. That's retirementreformation.org.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him. And as we do in every show, in the middle segment, we always bring in a fabulous guest that's just got a story to share about how God is using them in their quote-unquote retirement years. Bruce, who do you have for us today?
Well, to our audience, I'd like to introduce Mark Andrews, and I think you're going to really enjoy our conversation today. And Mark, thank you for joining us. So just to kind of introduce you or introduce yourself to our audience, give us just a little executive summary of Mark Andrews and how God got you to where you are.
Sure, Bruce. Wow, that's a long, loaded question, but they say that you've heard the saying that life begins after 50. And I think for me, from a ministry career point of view, that is so true. The past 15 years of my life, career and ministry wise, have been the most fulfilling by far. And that's especially true, I think, in the past about the past 5 years since we started Adoptive Family Resources back in early 2019. Just being able to pursue a dream that I'd had, just to launch out and to do something that I, along with the Lord's help, of course, created. And having a heart for adoption with both of our children being adoptees from India. They're adults now, of course. That was really the heart passion for what I wanted to do to help other adoptive and foster families both through training, through what we call parent coaching, support groups. And so that's really come full circle. My background is family and adolescent counseling. I did that for nearly 30 years in private, public sectors, faith-based, non-faith-based, and during that time, worked with a lot of adoptive and foster families, and just really saw the unique needs that they have. And so God really opened the door for us back in 2019 to really get involved directly in providing that type of service. Support services for adoptive and foster families.
It's interesting over probably the last, I guess the last year, God has just continued to expose me personally to the issues and the needs and the opportunities of so many young people and the opportunities for the church and for families to be able to reach out and solve a problem. I've heard the number, Mark, that there's 400,000 young people that need to either be part of an adoptive family or a foster family. Is that a pretty accurate number?
It's close, Bruce. There's the last statistics I saw. We've got about 440,000 children right now in this country in foster care. About 125,000 of those kids are either adoptable or potentially adoptable. And that's just in this country. Of course, there are just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of children in other countries that are waiting for a forever home too, to be adopted.
Yeah, it's interesting. Judy and I were foster parents for 10 years. And at that time in the state of Oregon where we lived, you could not adopt. If you were the foster parents, you could not adopt, which I always thought was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard.
Yes.
And so, but then governments sometimes do that. So what seems to, as you look out over your experience and the ministry that God has led you to create and the challenges that are out there, what are the 2 or 3 things that perhaps someone who is, say, again, 65 or older or 60 or older could really make a difference that they could step into? Can you identify just what a couple of those things might be, and then how your ministry could actually help and support them?
Yeah. I think, Bruce, when I think about the field of service that I am in, there is such a need for in the foster system for court-appointed social workers. They call them CASAs. And you will find that a lot of seniors, a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s serve as CASAs. There's also a huge need for volunteering. I know that one of the foster care organizations that I contract with, they're always in need of volunteers, and that's everything from working in their thrift stores to serving as some type of volunteer mentor to a family, especially seniors maybe who have adopted and who have fostered in the past, such as yourself, to be available to do that. I think about a lot of foster parents, at least here in Georgia, and I think this is true nationwide, a lot of foster parents are single females, are single women. And to think about seniors, retirement age, whether it's a couple or an individual who could just provide some type of volunteer support for them, even, providing respite services, just being a friend to those families.
Well, I would hope that our listeners are listening carefully and listening with their hearts, not just their minds. I heard a term recently, Mark, that maybe you could expand on, because I think it touches on what you're suggesting. It was wraparound grandparents. Talk about that just a little bit. That just expands. So maybe there's some of the folks that are listening that are going, I could do that.
Yeah, I think that ties in with what I was just sharing. So many, again, actually, most of my work now is being done with foster care organizations. I still work in the adoption area, but I think about these children, whether it's in, let's talk about the local church, for instance, where you have foster children or adopted kids in the church who have no contact at all with their biological grandparents for different reasons, and where in a safe church setting where those grandparents could be those wraparound people that those precious kids could look forward to seeing on a Sunday or a Wednesday. Grandparents play such a critical role, and of course, there's a lot of grandparents now who are providing what's called kinship foster care. These are biological grandparents of the kids in foster care, but so much more is needed, I think, in the church arena, where these kids have another support person or a support couple, those grandparents who can just be someone who's just there for them in different ways.
The one of the things that we're realizing in the Retirement Reformation is the desire and the need for all different kinds of mentoring and support. And so I look forward to working with you and finding ways that we can provide both encouragement, support, perhaps education, direction, answer questions, and so on in this whole area. Because, if every church in the country would identify a family that was willing to be a foster family, and then two older couples came alongside them, the church could bless the community in a very short period of time with very, very little effort, but just knowledge, experience, and an open heart.
Yeah, I was we're here in Georgia, recently heard a speaker talk about, with the number of churches in Georgia, if one family from each church would adopt out of foster care, we would not have a foster care crisis anymore here. We've got probably about 11 to 12,000 children in foster care. Not all are adoptable, but I would say probably a good quarter of those are. And so again, it's a special niche. To be a foster parent, to be an adoptive parent is a calling of the heart. It's not everybody is wired to do that. But I think there are people out there, if they were encouraged to do that, if they were informed more to do that, would be open to do that.
Well, we look forward to being able to spread that word in as many places and ways that we can. And we thank you for the work that you do and that you're doing. So, Jim, do you have any questions as we wrap up?
I got just one question for you, Mark. You're 65, as you said. A lot of people say, okay, time for you to retire. But I'm guessing that God's not done with you yet. Do you have a vision for what God's got for your next 15 years?
Yeah, Jim. My vision is I'm going to keep doing this till I drop. And so, Lord willing, if I still have breath and strength by 80, I will be doing the same thing and more of it. Support for foster care and adoption agencies. All of my life, all of my professional life has been spent working with kids and families. And that's how I think. That's what keeps me motivated. That's what keeps me young. And Lord willing, if I'm still here in 15 years from now, my vision is doing more of the same with more places, more agencies, more people, and just providing that support.
I love it. It'd be our prayer that we can help that growth desire, that growth vision.
It's kind of freaky to think I'll be 80 in 15 years.
I know. I'm 82. So here we go.
Yeah. Check out Dr. Mark Andrews online at adoptivefamilyresources.org, adoptivefamilyresources.org. Dr. Mark Andrews, thanks for being on iRetire4Him today.
Thanks, Jim and Bruce. Really appreciate the opportunity. God bless you guys.
And we'll be right back on more on iRetire4Him.
Our work on this earth doesn't end when the paycheck stops. God calls us to be faithful for a lifetime. Whether you're looking forward to retirement or you're already there, our all-small group study, Recreating Retirement, will help you understand, engage, and activate what God has for you in this fourth quarter of life. Join Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Bruinsma as you consider your past, strengths, spiritual gifts, and your passions, and how they all come together as the call God has for you in these years. Connect with us on our online community group at facebook.com/Retirement Reformation, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, or if you'd like to bring Recreating Retirement to your church, email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org. Are you ready to start your life-changing journey today?
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece and the resource of the Retirement Reformation. So excited to be having this conversation. Not really excited, Bruce, but I'm excited that we're dealing with something that many people don't deal with. We're talking about how isolation can lead to bankruptcy in our gray years. And that isolation can mean so many things. Obviously, if you're not surrounded by a great cloud of wisdom people, you're going to make decisions that aren't great decisions. And when we get isolated from peers that are making good decisions, we'll sometimes make those bad decisions, which is like spending money we don't have. Bruce, is there hope here? Can somebody recover from bankruptcy in retirement? Can you recover from financial difficulties in bankruptcy?
Absolutely, you can, and you can do that at any age, not just in your senior ages. There's one thing that we didn't talk about in the last segment that I wanted to pinpoint that I see is where, in the example that I gave of the father spending the $170,000 on his daughter's wedding, the inability to say no to your children is one of the key circumstances where I see really unwise decisions being made, poor stewardship decisions being made. So another couple that they had 3 children. Each one of them were very needy, were bad money managers. They kept coming back to their parents for more money. The parents would call me and say, well, I need to take some more money out of my retirement plan because Sally needs whatever. And it's just dumb. I mean, pardon me, but there's no other way to do it. So what is the answer as you posed the question in the beginning of this segment? The answer is that you got to change the way you think. And when you can change the way you think to become a good steward, then you also will change the way that you act. Your behavior will change. And when your behavior will change, it will change your relationships and your relationship to money. And you'll be able to deal with it through God's eyes as a resource that he charges us with the responsibility of being good stewards. And when we are not good stewards, it means that we're focusing both our attention and our money on us or what it is that we want or need or think that we must do, when in fact it's not true. Give you one example, going back to that wedding situation. So many of our listeners either have gone through this or have yet to go through it because they have kids that aren't going to get married. Take a look at your budget and in fact decide how much money that you are going to provide for the wedding. Tell them what it is, tell them in advance, and don't stray from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's so simple, but very few couples that I see are individuals. And then when you got a divorce in the middle of it, it gets even more complicated. But change your thinking, change your behavior, and change your relationships. And then you will find God's path through that to a place of being a good steward where you will have resources to not only support yourself, but to build the kingdom.
So I love a couple of points I really want to continue on, because you're just saying, listen, we just got to change the way we think, which is a Romans 12:2 moment. Stop copying the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. That's that heart transformation stuff. That's that sanctification stuff that goes on in us as Jesus followers. But most of us are really good with that in a lot of other ways, but not with our finances. Because we live in a world of plenty. We live in a world where we don't ever deny ourselves anything. When we want something, we go on Amazon and we're like, I'm going to get it. Yeah, I mean, we don't even wait. That's a free plug for Amazon today. And being able to say no to your kids, because our kids need to grow up and be adults too, because what are they going to do when we're not here? I mean, if we're constantly taking care of them, what do they do when we're gone? And if they haven't learned it, and by the time we're gone, they're in their 50s or 60s, if we've been helping them the whole time, it's trouble. What is the Retirement Reformation? How can the Retirement Reformation walk alongside of our listeners, Bruce, if they find themselves in financial difficulty? Maybe they're not to the point of bankruptcy, but they find themselves in financial difficulty and they need some counsel. How can we help?
Well, number one, we have counselors that can consult with them. We can also are in the process of identifying Christian financial counselors that we can refer them to. As much as I disagree with Dave Ramsey on lots of things, one of the things he does really, really well with his Peach University is let's get out of debt, and he's just a real stickler for that, and that's certainly part of the answer. So it's not that there's a lack of information of how to do it. The biggest is a willingness to step into the process, to begin to do it, and to listen, and to begin to understand what, in my context, does it mean to be a good steward. I have a gentleman that I know, he makes about $85,000 a year, should be able to support himself, in the process of getting a divorce. And his employer was just notified that he was being evicted from his apartment. I have no idea where he's spending his money. No idea. But I'm going to sit down with him and find out. But, when you're making $85,000 a year and you're a single dad and your kids are not living with you, I don't know how you can do that. But he's figured out a way. And so he's making a series of ongoing, continuous bad decisions financially. And so, part of the answer is stop it.
You mentioned Dave Ramsey, and he is really great about helping get people out of debt. One of the things that I recommend people is that people check out Crown Ministries, crown.org, because it doesn't just teach people how to get out of debt, but it really teaches people biblical financial wisdom and surrounded with scripture. It's a program that impacted Martha and I in our marriage, and it just teaches you to understand what the scriptures have to say about money, not just getting out of debt. Bruce, as we close out today's show, how about a story of hope? How about a story of somebody you've known that was heading in financial, the wrong direction, but sought the Lord and found a way back out? Do you got any of those stories for today?
Yeah, matter of fact, I got a pretty dramatic one of someone that I know fairly well. Matter of fact, they went bankrupt twice.
Oh my!
They went bankrupt in their business, and then they went bankrupt personally, about 5-6 years apart. They made bad decisions in their business, and they made bad decisions in their personal life. They were church-attending Christians. They were not people of faith. They were not connected with God's word and the instructions that's there. And they did not have a small group where they could get both advice and support and encouragement. And so there was a major change in this particular case in the husband's life when he turned his life over to Christ and realized that the power of the Holy Spirit is a place where he could get direction and advice and next steps. It wasn't from the world, or in this case, his wife, but he stepped into that, and he read 3 different books on money management, all from a Christian perspective, a couple of Ron Blue's books and one other. And he came back and he said, Bruce, I can't believe I've been this stupid. He said, it's all right in front of me, and I just couldn't see it. And I said, couldn't see it? He shook his head a little bit and said, no, wouldn't see it. And he said, now I am beginning to see it. And he said, could I meet with you on a regular basis just as a mentor and tell you what I'm doing and get some ongoing input? And said, certainly. Well, that was 9 years ago. He now has a successful business, did go through a divorce, has a successful second marriage, and his life is totally turned around. In the what he is modeling for his kids and for others that he comes into, and his willingness to be transparent with the pain of his story gives me great hope for the impact that will have on others. And we each have our stories, and we each have that opportunity.
Wow, that's a story we should capture right here on iRetire4Him one day for one of our middle segments. That'd be a good idea. Bruce, great conversation. Tough topic, but we just need to be aware, everybody listening, that don't let isolation to impact your life in any way. Surround yourself with believers that will encourage you constantly. And if you're starting to head down a financial path that you shouldn't, just surround yourself with people that can help speak truth into you and will walk you back the other direction. But thanks, Bruce, for bringing this to our attention. You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, with founder Bruce Brynsma and your host, Jim Brangenberg. We're Christ followers stretching our faith in our retirement years so we can say,
I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Brynsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.